Welcome everybody. Here we are at GreenTech Festival. My name is Stewart Rogers. I'm Editor-in-Chief at Badass Times and Managing Editor at Grit Daily. It's a great pleasure to be here, and here we are in the Deep Dive Innovation Session. I am joined by two incredible guests who are going to give you a short presentation. Now, one very important point, we need to make this session really nice and interactive, so please listen intently to our two guests. And ask questions. I will be seeing the questions here on this wonderful tablet, and I'll be able to ask your questions directly after their presentations. But first, let's get to know our guests. So first of all, Daniel, maybe you could tell everybody who you are, who you're with, and why this topic particularly is important to you.
Thank you very much, Stewart. My name is Daniel. I'm the head of sales at Climeworks. Climeworks is a company who developed a solution to take carbon out of the air with machines. So why do we believe this makes sense? We know that we're emitting by far too much CO2 to the atmosphere. And in the first step, we need to reduce our emissions, but this will not be enough. So there is already too much carbon out there to reach our climate targets. So we need to draw carbon out of the air, and this we can do with our machines. The machines you can imagine to be a centric unit, which we call a CO2 collector. This is a metal box of 2 × 2 × 2 meter. You can see one downstairs at the Audi booth. And inside this metal box we do have a filter, and this filter is attracting carbon dioxide. And we can also release this carbon dioxide out of the filter and use it for subsequent processes. For example, we can make fuels out of it. You know, when you're burning fuels, you get CO2 and water. You can also reverse this process and take CO2 and water and produce fuels. This is one thing you can do with CO2. But you can also store it somewhere and create so-called negative emissions. This is something, for example, we do in Iceland, where we pump the CO2 underground, deep underground, and there it starts to react with the subsequent surface, and we basically turn it into stone. And by doing that, we can reduce the CO2 content of the atmosphere and help to stop and reverse climate change.
Excellent, thank you. And please, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Stuart. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak up here at the GreenTech Festival. My name is Michael Lemke. I'm representing Huawei. Huawei is potentially maybe well known across the world. So I'm busy with technology question and regulatory aspects, technology and associations, technologies and standardization bodies, etc. And we believe that there's a very close connection between ICT and, let's say, our current challenge which we face in the world with the climate change and the carbon dioxide production and reduction and control. So we see two dimensions of the ICT. First of all, the ICT has the potential to, let's say, impact our traditional way of living, business as usual it's been called, to the extent that to a substantial amount by optimization of resource consumption, resource use in the world, we could substantially save carbon dioxide, or we could reduce the carbon dioxide production by digitalization and by all the means of digitalization which help to optimize material loops, optimize power consumption, optimize let's say the logistics, etc., etc. So from that perspective, and the potential has been once investigated, maybe the one or the other knows the Smart 2020 investigation, where there is been, the potential has been raised once that there would be 15% of the global footprint could be impacted by ICT, so we see that ICT technologies play an important role. So why do I say so? We as Huawei are an ICT company. We are providing innovation, product solutions in this space. We call ourselves, our ambition, our own ambition is to push forward intelligent communication, because digitalization relies on communication a lot. It's the fundament of this, let's say, domain, industry domain. There's a second dimension which we also understand quite well. Due to the increasing digitalization, there is, of course, debate about the power consumption and the carbon footprint of ICT technology itself. So we feel committed to provide any feasible innovation in material science, solution concepts, etc., to dampen this power consumption to the maximum extent. So we are very proud that we can contribute to this endeavor and the challenge which we see by providing best-in-class, most efficient solutions with terms of energy consumptions. I give you some examples. So we know that the technology capability, for instance, for a next generation mobile network technology like from 4G to 5G, there's in principle the opportunity to save or to bring the specific consumption for 1 megabyte down by factor 10. If you double check that on several, let's say, investigations of realistic cases, and I can just refer to an investigation by the environment department here in Germany, which just found out that, for instance, for a video streaming case, 5G would be consuming 1/3 compared to the previous or the preceding technology, or that fiber and Wi-Fi technologies combined would provide a very good fundament for communications. And funnily enough, we are active in all these areas. Moreover, we are also contributing to the increasing artificial intelligence part of the digitalization by at least temporarily trying to address the best power efficiency measured in watt per top, it's been called, total operation processes. And this is around 0.003, so we think that we can contribute. And last but not least, I would love to take up or pick up a line from the morning sessions, the keynotes. So we are able to deliver those technologies on the spot. We are able to deliver them globally, and we would think it's a time to do and not to talk about, let's say, new products, new solutions, but rather use them as they come up and, of course, follow the innovation path of this industry and in its striving forward to improve the situation. This would be all from my side first.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you both so much. We're waiting for our wonderful audience to think of some good questions, but I've got a good question, I think. We do have a massive problem ahead, and we do have to act quickly. We have some significant issues when it comes to, for example, CO2. And much of the CO2 production in the world is not from individuals. If every single person, does their thing and lives as sustainably as possible, we're still only fixing up to 30% of the problem. The vast majority of the problem comes from corporations, and it's very important that we fix that level in terms of producing CO2. But you have a solution that can still aid the world after the production of CO2 and deal with that. I mean, tell us a bit more of a deep dive on how that works and why it's so important.
So, what you're saying, I think, is you're addressing a very important topic that we need to reduce our CO2 emissions. We have some. When you look at the distribution of the CO2 sources, then you see you have some hotspots. You also see that some of the hotspots already reduce the CO2 emissions quite a bit, and others do not, like transportation. And in the first step, it's definitely important that we reduce the emissions. That needs to be done. But there are also some unavoidable emissions, be it from a technology point of view or from an economical point of view, where it is not possible or doesn't make sense to reduce the emissions, and there you need to have solutions to remove the emissions out of the atmosphere. And this is where technologies like ours come into place to take care of such emissions. Today we are emitting 40 billion tons our technology is not made to remove 40 billion tons from CO2 out of the air, out of the atmosphere. Not because we do not want to, because it doesn't make sense. Just to take a few figures, I mean, science says that by the year 2050, we need to remove about 10 billion tons of carbon dioxide out of the air. When we take the level as our technology, direct air capture, is today, we would need to scale up this industry by a factor by 65% every year. If you look at any industry, I'm not talking about IT, there it looks a bit differently, but if you look about any hardware industry, we never had over 30 years a growth rate of 65%. And this means that we need to start today with developing such technologies that they are ready by 2050, because we will simply not be fast enough to reduce our emissions that far. And on the other hand, you said, I mean, the individuals are just responsible for 30% of the emissions. I think what is also important is we should not only consider our own footprint and what percentages we have on the total emissions. It's important also that we ask ourselves, what can we do to solve the problem? If everyone says the one there is emitting more than I, and I'm not doing anything until he has started, then I mean, you know, someone needs to do the first step, and this is us. And when is the best time? Yesterday. The second best time is today.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I mean, there's a certain type of peer pressure where, you know, people support each other and show that there is benefit to doing this, and then they get value from it, and that usually is a virtuous cycle. And then there's what you said, which is that people just won't do it until you know, somebody else does, and they won't be the first to move. We end up in a vicious cycle there, and nobody actually does anything. I like what you said in terms of the difference between where we seem to be right now, which is a lot of people talking about things, versus people actually going ahead and doing things. But we also have a problem with doing things, because I think Germany is famously one of the most regulated countries in the EU, and they're always putting in regulations that can sometimes stifle innovation and stifle the opportunity for people to do things. Other countries have varying levels of regulation, sometimes worse, sometimes better. What can we do? How do we get to a point where we can just focus on getting things done and then iterating from there as we find out what works, what doesn't, and how we can improve it?
I think it is worthwhile to, let's say, mix approaches. First of all, the German regulatory system is, of course, it's very thorough. I would say it's very well designed, and it's working in the long term potentially very well. But in the short term, we might have some, let's say, drawbacks of this situation, since the exploring space might be a little bit limited. So I think generally we have a good situation, because there are all programs in applying ICT or IT technologies. They are accepted. Yeah? You know, we have seen the substitution effect, the dematerialization effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't want to share it, I just want to make or observe the effect. And I love to tell following story, that we have seen that there is a big potential of IT technologies. We just take a very simple example of this video conferencing. So video conferencing is a funny example. Even it also sheds a light on the real situation, and I will try to explain a little bit the story. If you plan to have a meeting, what do? You do a travel planning, you arrange a hotel accommodation, you book a flight or a train, whatever, and this is all material consumption. Yeah. And it has also its price, so it's if you know, like a national income. Now you have 50 to 70% of the value by the Zoom, yeah, but not the national income. And this makes it a little bit difficult. Yeah? So, but the effect is there, and we see there's high power of this substitution. Coming back to your question, we think we should rather, let's say, we should keep, let's say, track of the innovation, because the innovation is, let's say, the fundament of this future improvements. But we should also carefully apply what is available and not try to reinvent the wheel. So translated to that what I said before, if there are standards, global standards for communication, like for instance the 5G, just apply and not try to rebuild. Yeah? Of course, any effort should be spent on the next step, maybe, because each and any of these technology innovation steps has the benefit that the resource intensity is reduced dramatically. Yeah? So I pledge for play a little bit more, try out more, and correct a little bit later. So just to open the space of trying. And yes, you're right, less talking. I have a very nice statement in mind, which came up 2009 already with 4G. At that time, I think it was Tele2, who was the first European operator who used the 4G. And he said a very simple statement to the audience: stop trialing, just do.
Exactly. You know, I always think about technology in two ways, because we have got used to saying that technology is moving faster than ever before. And from a purely technology standpoint, that's true. You know, we are innovating things faster than ever before. We are iterating faster than ever before. The power of everything we produce, the speed, is getting faster and faster and faster and better and better and better. However, people often forget about the cultural change element of technology. And many of the technologies that we want to implement in order to save the planet actually cause cultural change. And in causing cultural change, it means that if they're going to become mainstream and accepted by everybody, we are often looking at an entire generation before that happens. So it doesn't matter about the speed of technology, we have a long time before people accept it or make it mainstream. You then have another problem, which is that if what you're doing to save the planet upsets the status quo and removes a lot of money and power from people that would prefer things to stay the same, you're going to need either a very big slush fund to pay them off, or you're going to need even more time. How are we going to solve those cultural change problems with the technologies that you're both putting forward? And do the things, you know, are the things that you're doing causing those kinds of cultural changes, or are you able to just move forward and do, as we say, rather than worry about things to be acceptable or mainstream? Daniel?
I think you're pointing at two extremely important things. I do not believe that we as a Climeworks can change the way people are thinking. I think this is a bit a too big topic, and you also say that cultural change is really a long-term issue and not just something which happens overnight. What I believe, I mean, what we have seen in the last 2 years is really a start of this change of culture. I mean, we have so many people on the street fighting for the climate. People, they want to see a change. So I believe the environment is not the same anymore as it was 5 years ago. So there I see really positive signs. This is one thing. The second thing is that if we develop a new technology, then we need to keep in mind what we need to achieve with such technology to make it successful. First of all, it goes in the direction what you're saying. We should not change the standard of living of people. So we cannot ask people to change their way how they live. I mean, they have accomplished something, and they should also keep their living standard. Secondly, we need to develop something which is also economically viable. Maybe you need to implement mechanism to make it economically viable, but it doesn't work simply with philanthropy. We need to have market mechanisms behind to make it work. And the third thing is that if you really want to make a change, then we need to develop technologies which are scalable enough to make a difference. And if you have these three things, then I believe it will be successful.
Excellent, thank you. Mike, what's your view?
Okay, we are let's say we are a company, normal company with business interests, so we would not rather focus on changing people's mind. The only thing what we can do is we can provide, let's say, examples, solutions, and demonstrate that they are beneficial. So good solutions work out. I can give you lots of examples out of our sustainability program. For instance, we are a producer of lots of smartphones. What to do with the old smartphones? Yeah, and here there's a little example what we did. We used old smartphones to listen to the rainforest, to listen to the noise pattern of the rainforest, and let an artificial intelligence assess whether this forest is healthy or not. And this is a very nice example where you combine sustainability topics like what to do with the old phones. Second, what do you do with most advanced technologies, and how can you help the planet? And the forest, the rainforest erosion, if you like, or the cutoff of it is one of the most, let's say, impacting effects or actions at the moment on the Earth. And having a good surveillance, which is available by almost no costs, is a demonstration what you can do with technologies. So this is again, I can only repeat. We should change by examples. So if the examples are beneficial, I think the people will accept them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think everyone wants to be inspired by some of the things that are happening, and obviously you're both involved in some great projects that are very inspiring in terms of what they're achieving or what you want to achieve and where you want to go in order to solve basically what is the biggest problem that we have. I mean, I think the pandemic, of course, has taken everyone's attention, but it's without a doubt that climate change and the environment and making sure this planet stays habitable for humans is the biggest problem that we have to solve, and we have not very long left to solve it. Examples are good, they're inspirational, they help people to understand what is going on, but also how they might be able to get involved and how they might be able to make a difference, even just at a personal level or in getting involved in these projects. So we've focused a lot on the things that you're both doing, but I'm certain that you get inspiration from other projects. Maybe with the few minutes we have left, you could just give people an example of some of the inspiring things that you've seen that you think are going to add to what you're doing and help to solve the biggest problem that we have ahead of us. Daniel, what examples have you seen?
I think these are projects, as you said before, where people not just talking, they're making a step forward, and we also see that companies with this attitude are successful. One company I really like in this way is Sunfire from Dresden, not far away from here. They really push it forward. I mean, they're developing new technologies for electrolyzers to produce hydrogen. And this is also a company, they're not just talking. I mean, they just build it. And also what you said, I mean, they're willing to fail. And I think this is an important attitude you need to have. You shouldn't be afraid of failing. You should be afraid of not trying. And when you do it like this, then of course 30 times it's not successful, but the one time you are successful, then you get the jackpot. And projects with this way of thinking are really inspiring us, and we also try to collaborate with such companies to support each other, because at the end of the day we can only do it together.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point. I actually don't personally think of failure as failure, because that's a negative connotation. It just means that if you're doing something, everything is a lesson, right? And then you learn something, and then you can do it better in the future. So that keeps it more positively reframed. It's all about learning lessons, and you can't learn lessons unless you do something, right? So
that's how it is. Yes.
You can hypothesize as much as you like, but until you do it, you won't find out what to do next. What are some good examples that you've seen, Michael?
I'm thinking a little bit about the question. It's not that easy, not that easy one. Just try to map it a little bit. Okay, let me give following answers. First of all, Huawei is a company who is pretty much relying on a long-term experience on fundamental technologies and the engineering, let's say, valuation of it. So just, let's say, more or less known principles optimized to the very edge. How does that contribute? We bring up products which help dampen or control network, control energy consumption, optimize it. We do our homeworks. Just the example, in many areas we, for instance, say we don't need a power supply, you just have a solar panel, you have a very good battery management system. The battery management system we improved always a little, some single-digit percentage, but the number counts. So this is from our own inspiration perspective. Of course, and this is a second dimension of Huawei. Huawei grew in the past by listening to customers and solving problems. So we have a problem-solving attitude. So I'm very many years within Huawei. I witness it personally. It's always very inspiring when you just get a problem and the only thing is don't disturb me by solving this problem. Yeah, so here we have a little bit this behavior, as one said, there might be a failure and now come back. And this is exactly what we do as well. We try out whether we can succeed with our setup of capabilities, experiences, etc. And if it does not work, and if there's nobody who wants to have that problem which we had in mind to be solved, then we jump to the next one. But coming back to this overall responsibility, ICT as an own domain with an own, let's say, an innovation cycle with a big ambition, with this digitalization challenges, etc., is a big domain where you need sufficient innovation still in order to harvest the effects of this domain on this, let's say, sustainability aspect, and at the same time provide the floor to constantly evolve to have the best tools on hand.
Excellent.
This is what I would come up as an answer on your question.
Super. With the time we have left, I would love to just get a view on what is next for you each. You know, what is the most important thing that you're going to be doing next to further your solutions, to implement them, to put them into action, so that we can, make sure that we, start to learn, start to improve, and actually get the results that you're both looking for. So Daniel, what's next for you? What's coming up? What's most important to you right now?
Christoph, one of our CEOs and founders, always says we have two codes to crack. One is the technology code, and the other is the market code. And we need to work on both of them. So it's at the end of the day, and that's also what I said before, we need to have a business case. And this is the most important thing we need to develop over the next 5 years. We need to lower the costs, scale up the volume, scale up the plans. On the other side, also create business cases where our customers can be successful with it. And those two perspectives are important to be successful in the future.
Excellent, thank you. Michael?
Okay, maybe I can give, let's say, a very narrow view on, so since we are providing, for instance, 5G solutions, so I will be very busy to prove that those 5G solutions are beneficial, in particular for cities in Germany. So this is my direct field of investigation, and further on that with that technology you can also harvest all the efficiency and efficiency gains in the material production, so that combines 5G with manufacturing, maybe Industry 4.0, with its own argumentation, because Industry 4.0 means you produce to the point, so you reduce the waste or the overhead of, let's say, production on store or whatever. So this efficiency gain is a substantial part of the saving. And one of the future, the next couple of years, we have to prove that those ideas, born partially in Germany, bring their effect together with the technologies which are prepared to support these ideas. So this is, if you like, one of my major ones. And this is funny enough, because it exactly touches let's do instead of talking.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, listen, I wish we could talk for hours more on this, but unfortunately we can't. We have to let everyone else have their time too. Thank you to everybody in the audience here for enjoying this, and thank you to everybody watching online. I've been Stewart Rogers. Thank you so much, Daniel, Michael. Please give them a very warm round of applause for their wonderful, wonderful conversation.